All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the July meeting of the Board of Regents. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the MUS website. Jasmine, can you please take the roll?
Chair Dombrowski.
Here.
Regent Buchanan.
Here.
Regent Lozar.
Here.
Regent Bow.
Here.
Regent Southworth.
Here.
Regent Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Clifton.
Here.
Governor Dean Forte being represented by Dylan Clapmeyer.
Here.
Superintendent Arnson.
Thank you, Jasmine. Well, we meet this morning in Helena at the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Ed for a relatively brief business agenda. With the 4th of July holiday behind us, we are now well into that precious time that we know is Montana summer. However, the drive today from Missoula, we might have thought we were in the middle of winter. There was so much fog. We have 10 short weeks until the September meeting when we'll be able to join each other at the beautiful campus in Butte at Montana Tech. This morning's meeting includes a standard consent agenda of staff items, labor agreements, and emeriti faculty awards. The action agenda includes an updated, modernized Montana residency policy for students, which the board discussed in detail as an information item at the May meeting. It also includes a couple of facility items, and some additional policy items. At the completion of the short business portion of this morning's meeting, the board will convene in executive session to discuss several annual reviews. The board will then discuss a self-evaluation and finish the day with an informal planning session. With that, we will move into the approval of the minutes. The minutes have been previously distributed to the board. Are there any corrections? There are no corrections. The minutes are approved as distributed. I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Christian for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Much like this meeting, my report will be short and to the point. Following a busy legislative session and then our May meeting, we're kind of in full-scale implementation mode. That ranges from everything from actively bargaining with our 26 different union partners to implement pay plans there. The administrative plans have been implemented. We've had meetings on LRBP. Obviously, $1.2 billion came out of House Bill 5. The governor's office, budget office, certainly Russ Catherman and his team are well underway trying to figure out how we can get those type of projects planned, designed, and on the ground as quickly as possible. They're prioritizing those and working our way through that, but essentially just kind of in full scale post-session, post-May board meeting mode of getting everything loaded up and ready to implement the changes that came out of that very busy period. We have campus reports listed for you. Again, don't need to read those. There was a day and a time that we did, but they're there. A lot of good information. And then we have just a very limited number of introductions. I think President Bodner's here and has one that he would like to make, and we can move on to our business agenda.
Well, thank you, Mr. Commissioner and Madam Chair, members of the board. I have the privilege today of introducing not a new member of our leadership team, but a member of our leadership team in a different capacity, and that is Professor John DeBoer has officially accepted the role of UM's Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. And John will be well known to many on this group. He's been at UM for 15 years. He is a full professor in our school, or excuse me, College of the Arts and Media. Has served in a number of leadership roles, including as chair of the Faculty Senate, the director of the School of Theater and Dance, the acting dean of the College of the Arts and Media. He's a beloved teacher on campus. Just his creative scholarship has inspired students and colleagues across multiple disciplines. And he's also just been a fantastic institutional citizen for the university and for the system. And he'll be a very, very important partner to Provost Lawrence in her role at So a huge welcome and congratulations to John on his new role.
Excellent.
The last thing I guess I would mention is that the interim work is also well underway, and the interim committees have been established. They had the first meeting a week or so ago. Madam Chair was there and greeted the committee as well as myself, and super interested in our work together over the next couple of years. And we talked a little bit about the shared policy goals, and we talked a little bit about the work that will happen today around the student success agenda and some of that, and just excited to work together actively. Do we have one other announcement?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, Madam Chair, I'm also delighted, first of all, to recognize an extraordinary academic leader who have served us for 9 years. Chris Kearns has announced his retirement, effective at the end of this week, actually. And we want to thank him for his many years of devoted service to Montana State University. One of the main contributions among many that Chris left with us was that he consolidated and brought together the different areas related to student health and fitness. And that is a great legacy that has allowed us to build upon, particularly with the new student wellness facility. We have appointed Steve Swinford as interim Vice President for Student Success. Dr. Swinford is an extraordinary faculty member based in the Department of Sociology. Most recently, he has served with excellence as our Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and in charge of all things accreditation. And it's important to notice that our 7-year full accreditation is just around the corner. And this year, we are well ahead of time, thanks to Steve Diligent's diligent work in getting us prepared for that very important visit. So I just wanted to share with the Regents that we are very grateful for Dr. Chris Kearns' contributions and looking forward to working with Dr. Swinford.
Madam Chair, that concludes my report, and look forward to the business meeting.
That was brief.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian. I'll now turn it over to Dylan Klattmeyer with the Governor's Office. Please, Dylan, nice to have you here.
Thanks, Chair Dombrowski. I'll be brief. It's great to be back with you all. I was planning on being at the May meeting in Great Falls, but I was telling Allie all of those bills that she was going through at the May meeting that hadn't been acted on yet by the governor. We were still reviewing hundreds of bills mid-May, so that kept me there. But I just want to start by thanking Regent Rogers for her service as the chair for the last year. I really enjoyed working with her, and congratulating Regent Dombrowski on your election as the new chair this coming year. Certainly look forward to continuing to work with you both. And then, of course, Regent Buchanan, congratulations on retaining vice chair. Look forward to continuing to work with you. I know that the commissioner and OCHE staff went through a detailed legislative recap at your May meeting. I was able to go back and watch most of that. But I do just want to emphasize the legislative session saw record support for Montana's K-12 and post-secondary systems, giving us a real opportunity to enhance opportunities this biennium for Montana students. Everything from base funding to student and faculty support, OTO funding for innovative pilot programs, and then, of course, record infrastructure investment. I think the MUS is in a strong position to innovate education in the coming years. It was a great legislative session for education, not just because of the work that was done in those 4 months, though. I think all of the OCHE staff and regents could attest that, just importantly, the work that was done in the last interim leading up to session was really what set us up for success. Many of you know that OCHE, OPI, the regents, the Board of Public Ed, and the governor's office worked closely with education leaders in the legislature to find common areas of high-level policy agreement, and that's what resulted in the legislative success. So now, as the commissioner said, we have the harder job of implementing those bills in the next year and a half, and expanding on those efforts this interim leading up to 2025. I think between the joint state Board of Education meetings that we'll have each November, and the potential reconvening of those constitutional officers by the Education Interim Committee in the legislature. There's lots of opportunities to collaborate and hopefully set ourselves up for that same success in 2025. Last thing I want to hit on is just I was able to watch Deputy Commissioner Teal's presentation on the shared policy goals with the legislature that were discussed at your May meeting. And I think they serve as a great starting point for our work this interim. I think they fit well with the governor's goal of reimagining the delivery of higher education. 4 areas that the governor likes to focus on is addressing the underlying costs of a post-secondary education, focusing on on-time graduation, and moving towards asynchronous and proficiency-based delivery. I saw all of that in those joint policy goals. And then, of course, focuses on free speech, tribal relationships, CTE, and data sharing, all going to be very important topics this interim. Just finally, I know that the governor looks forward to getting back onto campuses this summer and fall to help elevate the success of all of these programs that we're discussing. So please let me know as those opportunities arise for the governor to visit your campuses. And of course, if we can be of assistance, please reach out anytime. But thanks, it's great to be back.
Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate the comments and certainly the reference to the shared policy goals. I don't believe that Superintendent Arnson is on yet, and so we'll pass that part of the agenda, and when she joins us, we'll cycle back to give her the opportunity to make her remarks. So let's go ahead and dive into our agenda, and again, we'll pause for her when she comes on. I'm moving along speedily, so I hope that's okay. So I hope everyone's had the opportunity to review the consent agenda items. Are there any items any regent would like to move off the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
So.
Ooh. I think the theater was over there. Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussion from members of the board? Is there any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. The consent agenda motion passes. So with that, we'll move on to the staff items. Sorry, that was the consent agenda. Now we're going to go to our action items. My mistake. The first item for discussion today is a request to plan an addition to the Bio-Research Building on the Missoula campus. I'll turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Trevor to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good morning. This is a rather straightforward item for planning and design on an existing building, in addition to an existing building on the campus, $600,000 worth of planning and design. The funding comes from a federal grant that this program has been awarded. So the existing building is currently approximately 10,000 square feet, made up of a first floor and a basement, with the design in mind of adding a second and third floor. This grant is going to allow the campus to expand in a very important area on campus related to bioresearch. It's actually the bioresearch building. The grant, I believe, and I'm sitting next to President Bodner, who knows about 14 times more about this topic than I do. So when I start to stumble here, I'm going to be specific really quick. The grant, though, is about $5 million. And so this will be $600,000 of that grant. The remainder of the funds will be for the construction. And in the new process that we have with facility items, all planning and design of any new construction will come to the board before the approval of construction. So in that vein, this item is brought before you today, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Are there comments, questions? President Bodner, any Or items to add?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is just, I mean, this is a really exciting project. This was actually a grant we got from an organization called the ALSAM Foundation, the Skaggs family, which generously funded the Skaggs School of Pharmacy at the University of Montana, funded this additional grant for an entity we're calling the Skaggs Institute for Health Innovation. And the primary focus is precision medicine. So using genetic information and our School of Pharmacy to target medications for people based on their specific genetic profile was the core of the grant. And this is for additional space. We got the grant actually about 3 weeks before the infamous March 2020 board meeting when COVID came aboard. And so we've been in the planning mode for this and have actually recalibrated how we're going to approach this, which has led us to a much more cost-effective way of creating some space for this by rather than building a new space, which was the original plan back in 2020, to rather expand on an existing building to launch these really important efforts.
Thank you, President Bodnar. I will entertain a motion to approve action item A.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Bao. Is there any discussion from members of the board? Is there any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Moving on to action item B. This item is a request for authorization to execute a lease at the industry building on the MSU Bozeman campus. I'll again turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Trevor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is just what it says, approval of the lease. Just a reminder to the Regents Policy 1003.6 requires all leases come for approval of the Regents that are over 5 years or over $25,000 per year. And so thus this item is here in front of you. This is an expansion of a current research department at MSU that has actually doubled its research funding over the last year. This lease will be paid for with that funding. It is actually a national government partnership intermediary that was originally approved by the Regents. It has been operating in the tech park just adjacent to the MSU campus. The Miltech is expanding, as I said. It's about a 4,000-foot addition to the current space that they have. The details related to the dollar amounts and the square footage are all listed in the item. Madam Chair, just again to emphasize, no state funding will be utilized for this piece.
Thank you. President Cruzado, anything to add to that?
Well, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Miltech is one of the jewels of the crown in Montana State University's research agenda and portfolio. This is one of our most important centers. We are about to celebrate 20 years of existence, and they serve as a liaison between university-based research and governmental units and industry partners. As Tyler mentioned, they have been exceedingly successful this last year. They have doubled their research expenditures, and they're running out of space fast. Some of the things that they do, they help with research and data analysis. They help providing manufacturing expertise. So this is going to be the next step in their very successful history. So as the item describes, it's about 4,000 square feet that will be added to their footprint, and they will be paid for it with the contract dollars and the overhead that will be derived from some of those grants.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve action item B.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussion from members of the board? Is there any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those abstaining?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion passes. Moving on to action item C, this item is a request for approval to revise Board of Regents Policy 940.1. I will turn it over to Chief Legal Counsel, Allie Bobbington. Please, Allie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. This item was discussed in detail at your meeting in May, and so I'm not going to do a deep dive on this, but obviously available for any questions the board might have. The primary purpose of the amendments is to tighten up some loopholes that we've seen in the residency policy and to make it more understandable for students and campus decision makers. Just to highlight a couple of the more substantive changes, it clarifies the 12-month test for residency to make it clear that students have to get their driver's license or a Montana ID, register any vehicle they're driving in the state, and register to vote if they were registered in a previous state. And without those three actions, they are disqualified from residency. It also clarifies what is necessary to meet the residency test for graduate programs. As the board knows, you had a number of appeals from graduate students, and so we thought it was important to just make sure that that test is very clear for students to understand. And then finally, one addition since the May meeting is that we've added an exception to the requirement to meet the 12-month test for incarcerated individuals participating in a second chance Pell or prison education program, and providing that after release, the student retains that status as long as the student remained continuously enrolled at the campus. So given the unique circumstances of offenders in our state prison population who are participating in these programs, which is a benefit, to the workforce and also to reducing recidivism for those individuals, we thought this is an appropriate place to have a very narrow exception for those incarcerated individuals who are participating in one of the programs. And with that, Madam Chair, the rest of the policy items are summarized really well in your agenda item. And again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I will entertain a motion to approve action item C.
Quick question.
Sorry.
Well, we could do
Please.
that for the comment.
Would you like to move?
I would do that, yes.
Moved by Regent Lozar. Is there any discussion from members of the board? Regent Lozar.
Thank you, Chair.
I said sure.
Just a really random quick question on page 6 of the policy. I guess I hadn't seen this the first time around. Not material, but is it something to a student who had a parent who was employed and resided in Yellowstone National Park? Should that be applied similarly to Glacier? Or where did that come from? I guess it seems a little bit.
Madam Chair, Regent Lozar, thank you for asking me that precise question. Because we did some research on this particular piece of the policy, and I am not sure where this came from. Ultimately, in talking with the campuses, it's not something that has ever been used. I think this is, the duality of Yellowstone National Park being in both Montana and Wyoming. And for those parents who are working for in a federal position, that it's appropriate to grant them the residency status. And so that is where I believe that this came from, and that's why it's specific to
There's no need to
park.
Glacier all,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Regent Lozar, Glacier's all within Montana boundaries. And there's some language in there about how long you can be gone from the state, which technically you might be in Wyoming. And so will be very narrowly used, but I think it just, it consistent with all we're trying to do with this, really creates some clarity within the language. But yeah, the other parks are,
Already included.
they're already in Montana, so you don't have the Wyoming issue. It's really about that.
Makes sense.
And I guess while I'm talking, the second chance Pell deal, we reported to the board the success of that first cohort. Again, some very odd nuances. It probably gets used very narrowly, but it adds some clarity for a few individuals. And I think it's just easier to do in policy than take them one at a time and go through all the appeals process. Thank you.
Any other discussion from members of the board? All right, is there any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. All right, moving on to action item D. This item is a request for approval to revise Board of Regents Policy 203.5.2. I will turn it back over to Chief Legal Counsel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this policy is the policies that sets out the process for appeals and how they move through the system. And the changes to the policy are simply cleaning up the language, making it more readable. And then we're also adding a 30-day deadline for filing a petition with the district court. This is consistent with the Montana Administrative Procedures Act, which governs most other administrative bodies, but not the Board of Regents. And so we just thought it would be helpful to have a deadline for any student who is dissatisfied with a decision of the board and wants to take the next step to district court.
I will entertain a motion to approve action item D.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Lozar. Is there any discussion from members of the board? Okay, any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. All right, Ally, we're going to turn back to you again. Moving to action item E. This item is a request for approval to repeal Board of Regents Policy 504.3. Once again, I'll turn it over to Chief Legal Counsel, Ally Baumington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This policy set out a separate residency test for students who are participating in professional student exchange programs like WICHE and WWAMI. As we worked through the amendments to Policy 940, the main residency policy, we determined that this particular policy is redundant and those students are already covered by the board's residency policy. So this really isn't necessary, and we think it will be helpful to have all of the policy language located in one place for students who are looking to understand what they need to do to meet their residency requirements.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve action item E.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Southworth. Is there any discussion from members of the board? From campuses? And any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Moving on to action item E. This item is a request for approval to revise Board of Regents Policy 940.13. I will turn it over to Director Scott Lemon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, this is, I believe, item F under 940.13. It's actually page 2, number 6, specific to the honorably discharged veterans waiver. And this is, as I shared in May, more of a policy cleanup procedure for us to just notify the board that we can eliminate some of this language and make this veteran waiver more accessible to our students. This is a direct result of the work that's being done across the state with all of our campuses. As I've shared before, every campus has a Veteran Support Services Center. They've got school certifying officials that work directly with student veterans. And then at the statewide level, we work with DLI, and John Sakowiak has presented as well. This is a collective effort across the state for all of our campuses to identify opportunities to get better, to make this honorably discharged veterans waiver more accessible. And if you look at the language that's being removed, it's specific to combat-related duty, the time of service, and then medals that are granted overall. And so we know we're serving a different type of veteran today that doesn't have the same sort of combat requirements, thankfully, to do this. Also, the Vietnam era language and a lot of the outdated, I would say, restrictions that would prohibit some veterans from utilizing this waiver overall. It's a last dollar out award overall, and so it's great for the veteran. It's great for those that are able to take advantage of it. We moved some requirements for first bachelor's degree only as well to serve our student veterans here in the state of Montana much better overall. Ties in great to that renewed focus, I would say, from a statewide effort on veteran student support, as well as resident student access to allow more folks to take advantage of this great opportunity on the honorably discharged veterans waiver. So, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve action item E.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussion, members of the board? Any discussion from campuses? Any public comment?
You do or no?
No, yeah,
Just
Okay.
to be clear, the policy 940.
okay. So it's Regents Policy 940.13 that we are voting on. Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes. So we're at public comment, and I'm just saying, I recognize we're about 18 minutes ahead of when public comment was suggested on the agenda, and then Superintendent Arnson, I believe, might be on her way, so I'm looking for the guidance of Commissioner Christian.
Do we have public comment?
I don't see any on that were registered at this
Um, We are on ours. I don't think we listed a time on public comment. We
Okay.
just show the meeting starting at 8.
At
So
8.
we could give it a minute, Madam Chair, or we can move forward. Either way. Want to take a break and try
Just give
to,
it a couple minutes, I think, and
why don't we take a 5 or 10 minute break and see if both of those
Okay.
groups show up, and if not, we'll move forward.
we'll come back at 8:40. That's 7.
Okay.
How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Good morning. Welcome, Superintendent Arnson. At the beginning of this next portion of the meeting after the break, I'm going to turn it over to you. So welcome.
Welcome. Well, good morning. It's nice to come and just get the microphone right away, right? It's called efficiency in the government. So good morning, everyone. School is in break, in session, how do I want to say, for families right now in our K-12 system. But our agency is working extremely diligent. You've gotten our report. There are a couple great highlights that are part of this. One of them has to deal with our teacher residency program, which we're very pleased that the legislature in the last year of the biennium is going to be taking over some of the fiduciary responsibilities. Right now, we're using our COVID money of $20,000 per resident to be able to be part of a year-long classroom experience and also be receiving some of the opportunities, possibly of loan forgiveness, mentoring that happens in the building as well as through the university system. We're using a spoke and hub model that Western with the University of Montana is the one that is championing this. But I have a lot more openings. I believe this next fall we're going to have 1,000 empty classrooms where we have lack of a quality educator. Now, there's been on the books for over 3 decades where there can be an emergency licensed teacher, a butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker from anywhere of the community can come in for 1 year. That can be rolled over for perpetuity without any kind of training, without any kind of post-secondary touch. There's a list of those. So that might be some low-hanging fruit that the university system might want to look at. Not necessarily to have dollars flow to the university system, but to really enrich those teachers that want to be in that classroom, that have that experience in that community, that are a lifelong learner, but for some reason they have just not gone to that post-secondary level. Maybe there's a different type of a certificate. Maybe there's something that we can do in an outreach where it could be a virtual model to keep them in their community, but also keep them in their classroom. So we know those have been on the rise. When I got into office in 2017, there were 19 of them. We're close to 300 right now of those emergency licensed teachers. Not a large population, but again, a population of individuals that live in Montana that work in our Montana public school system. Might be a great opportunity. But I also have an opportunity for more of the residents as well. If you know of anyone in your communities that would like to have that experience for a full year with a mentor teacher, and skin in the game from the district is housing. And we all know housing across our state is a precious commodity. So there are struggles with that, but we're looking for all kinds of ways to flow and move this forward. Legislature, this last time, I'm sure you're reeling from that Christmas. It was 90 days of Christmas for public school, and there's a lot of work to be done. We are just opening up the rules for our language preservation rules. We have to get them across the board before school opens. So there'll be comment period and all of that. They're going to the Secretary of State today. We are also looking at the charter bills. One is in court. The other one is not. A lot of discussion and opportunities. And if I could have anybody here at this grand table or out there in Montana Zoom land would like to raise their hand and partake in any kind of a committee in understanding what a charter or public charter might look like, I'll accept anything. So if I could, Madam Chair, just get any opportunity at all from post-secondary folks and community to be able to be part of that. Another experience that the legislature gave us on this Christmas of this session was a K-3 reading program. And it comes in 3 prongs. It's a jump start. So prior to school starting, if you're a public school student, you have the ability to be jump started. In other words, possibly you're noticed through an assessment, and then that family comes to school when the janitor is doing that, the hallway floors and the gym floor and everything else when it's rather quiet before the rest of the students come. To get students ready to go, jump started in literacy. The other prong has to deal with the public school. So if you are a public school student and you enter the doors the first day of school, it's not that you are segued away or separated out from your class, but you're looked at uniquely because of your reading ability to get you more emphatic recognition that your skills need to be served up a little bit more. Not more homework per se to a K-3 student, but more acknowledgement that your scores, again with an assessment, need to have a little bit more dusting off. And the third one is a homeschool model, which will happen during the year, of any time during the year, and dollars are flowing to each one of these 3 prongs, as I had said. If there's anyone here, if any one of your campuses has a literacy model, a coach, anyone that would like to also serve in opening up this Christmas box, that I would be very appreciative as well. We do have early learning standards. We do have reading standards from kindergarten on, but this is a whole new look, and there was monies that were also given for this. We would love to have a partnership. The other thing I want to end with, and I very much appreciate the gracious amount of time, is that we have asked the Department of Education for a waiver on our assessment. We have always followed the law for sure and want to make sure that we continue following the congressional edict that there's a summative test. But really, they're basically asking for a toe in the water of what does success look like in math, reading, and science. So last year we achieved, as Montana was one of 10 states, almost a $3 million grant to be able to see what tests look like. We have gone through a different model that no other state is doing, and we're really pleased that Montana is leading the way. It's a through-year model. So we are teaching and testing in 5 different segues across the course of a year, and then aggregating the test score, and that is what is given to the federal government. What that means then is that the teachers are given professional development on our state standards of math and reading and science. We were with 5,000 students with over 30 districts last year, and 500 of those, 1/10 of those, were tribal students. So we really tried really hard to mirror what we have in our great state. We are accelerating that. Instead of 5 and 7, we are going 3 through 8. And we have over 20,000 students with over close to 60 districts at this point that are part of this program. And they are not receiving any dollar. This is an initiative drawn by teachers because teachers are recognizing that that one-size-fits-all test doesn't show success. Let me remind you, our last summative test, 32% proficiency, C or better in math, 41% proficiency in reading. That does not recognize the good effort that the classroom teacher, the parent, and that student is working through. And yes, there are some afterglow or after effects of the pandemic. But we believe that the through-year model of the testlets closest to teaching and learning is the way to honor teachers, the way to have students recognize their own growth. And we believe that the federal government is this close. So we've asked for a waiver. I gave them 15 days. It's been 60 days since I asked for the 15-day grant. We have many organizations that have come in our support to the federal government. We believe we're really close. All of our congressional delegation, including the governor's office, has written a letter of support for this new testing model. We firmly believe that if we are going to honor public education and education in the span of when they come into school and when they exit, even in your realm, that how we assess begins in K-12. And that's where Montana is leading at this point. Again, I thank you for this time. My report is got some other great opportunities for you to review. We are excited that the interim is here, and in 18 months they'll be sat again. So I would like to offer that within that work period of 18 months, if there's things that we can do together, let's do that for the betterment and the long span for our communities, our parents, our students, whether they're kindergarten or whether they are in a PhD format on your campuses. With that, Madam Chair, I thank you again for the gracious time, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Arntzen. Are there any questions? It was nice that you were able to join us personally, and it worked just fine.
Timing was perfect for me. And if you don't mind, I do have multiple other things that I need to attend to.
Please.
I believe our partnership needs to continue to be strong. If I could also add to this, I am going with MSU, and I am working with their economics department with Dr. Carly Urban. And my purpose with her is something happened with the $0.6 billion of ESSER money. In 2025, we have a decennial study on school funding to recognize this infusion of the gift of $0.6 billion. We're having her team then really look to see is what happened in our rural schools, what happened in our urban schools, what happened with all of our population of our students. So we're really pleased for that partnership. One of the things that I would also request if you could take back to your campuses, more research on our testing ability. I can go to Kansas University, I can go to Harvard. I don't want to do that. I would like to have our university system really show that research of what has happened in our K-12 system. So I do know that I'll be reaching out to the University of Montana to see exactly, it isn't about education. It is about the research of what has happened and what will happen if indeed the federal government allows Montana to lead the way in this. So I'll be reaching to your staff, President. So with that, there's always an ask when you come to power. I thank you for serving our great state. Thank you.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to now public comment. Since this is a public meeting, I will now call for any public comment. Public comment may be offered on items on this meeting's agenda or any matter not on the agenda but under the jurisdiction of the Board of Regents. Written public comment may also be sent to Jasmine Casanovas at jcasanovas, that's JCASANOVAS @montana.edu. To allow us to give everyone a chance to comment, please limit your comment to 3 minutes. Jasmine, is there any public comment?
Do not see any.
Okay, there's no public comment. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. This concludes our business portion of the agenda for this morning. Our next item will be taken up during the executive session. As we move into the executive session and as the presiding officer, I have determined that this discussion relates to a matter of individual privacy and that the demands of individual privacy clearly exceed the merits of public disclosure. At the completion of the executive session, the board will move into a discussion of the board's self-evaluation. Upon completion of that discussion, the meeting will be adjourned. Okay.
We got it.